Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is the space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. As always, we ask that you subscribe, like us, leave comments, and if you're so inclined, support us on Patreon. Today's guest is someone who has, as we might say, pulled himself up by his bootstraps. Our guest is typically known as Sammy. His real name is Dr. Jean-Guimond Orelien. He's an entrepreneur, an innovator, and an author. He was born in Haiti, and he's dedicated his life to advancing solutions that improve human well-being. A visionary, entrepreneur, and leader, he has built and scaled organizations at the cutting edge of science, technology, and public health. He's the founder of two pioneering companies, ScitoVation and SciMetrika, and he brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in business startups, organizational development, and business leadership. It's drawn on a deep understanding of science, psychology, and timeless wisdom. He guides others through unlocking their fullest potential. Now, in Turning Water into Butter, and that's the book that we're going to discuss in a little bit, Sammy shares powerful life lessons from his journey, inspiring readers to embrace their inner strength and to live with purpose. He has been recognized by Inc. magazine as one of the top 10 Black entrepreneurs and named one of the top 50 African Americans in science and technology by Black Money. Sammy's journey is a testament to the power of resilience, purpose, and vision. He's also received the James E. Grizzle Distinguished Alumni from UNC-Chapel Hill, where he serves as an adjunct professor and advisory board member. When we talk about ScitoVation and SciMetrika, he was the CEO of ScitoVation. Well, he is the CEO of ScitoVation still, right, Sammy?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And that's a pioneering company that helps clients assess the safety of chemical products throughout using innovative non-animal methods. And prior to that, he co-founded SciMetrika, a nationally recognized public health company that earned accolades such as Inc. magazine's top 500 fastest growing companies and the North Carolina Companies to Watch Award. So I'm not going to say any more about him, and later on we'll discuss how you can connect with him if you wish to. But right now, Sammy, I'd like to turn the mic over to you to talk about your spiritual journey from childhood until now, and then we'll get into a discussion about your book.
Sure. Well, Bob, thank you for inviting me to your show. I'm delighted to meet you, and I enjoy your sweet spirit. I can feel it, even though we're not in the same room. So my spiritual journey started out in Haiti. That's where I was born. And I would say, just like everyone on earth, I came into this world as a loving spirit. People may think of Haiti as a poor country, but I didn't feel poor. I felt love. I had a good time. I didn't think that there was anything better in the world, frankly.
Okay.
It was wonderful. However, there was a time when I think there was an awakening when I realized that my mom had no clue how to feed me, and that's one of the stories I talked about in the book. I think that was my awakening into the world, that something was off. Um, I think I'd asked my mom before, what would we eat next time? But this time I asked her, and I looked into her eyes, and I could see that she had no clue. She didn't know where our next meal was coming. And she said something about, I will whip water if I have to turn it into butter, but I will feed you. And this is where the title of the book comes in. So she said that she would essentially create the impossible to feed me. But I realized right there and then that she didn't have a clue how she was going to do it.
How old were you at that point?
And I'd say this is kind of the story for me of when I decided that I had to be in control. I looked and I said, this poor woman, she had no clue.
Yeah.
So I couldn't trust the adults around me. So I decided that I would be in charge. And so I'd say in the book that I kind of created this persona of the lone wolf, of the control freak. So it was me by myself in the world. At least that's the story that I told myself. That's the tape that was running me. And I would say to some extent that, you could say that it served me well because it pushed me in terms of not being driven by the reality around me. That is that I wanted to control the reality around me. I didn't want to have the same thing that my mother had. I didn't want to be like my parents, where it seems like they didn't know where the next meal was coming. And that pushed me into education. I realized that education was my ticket, so to speak, out of it. And so I pushed hard for education. Then I've always been kind of hungry, so to speak, always been driven to control my environment. And that's what led me in corporate America. People used to tell me that I'm too ambitious. When managers say, you're over ambitious. Because, I was burning the midnight candle, always raising my hand to take on new projects. And so it led me to go quickly in corporate America from technical scientist to become a project manager, then a program manager, where I was running like a little small company within a large company. And then I was successful doing it. And so actually my colleagues encouraged me, said, you can do this on your own. You seem to be pretty good at it. So I went on my own with SciMetrika, which I go quickly from nothing to close to $20 million in revenue. And then I funded ScitoVation. But in the process of having this tape run me, and I'm not saying that, and I'm very clear that it's not me running the tape. I think it's the tape running me, that I had to be in control. At some point, I realized, and I think it's when I reached about 40, I said, is that it? If everything happened now, if this is my last day, would I be happy? And I think when I was 40 years old, I'm now 55, it kind of led me to this quest of finding out what's next. What is this life about in terms of this journey? What does it mean? Is it really turning water into butter? Is it really to change your life situation in terms of providing for yourself? And then the realization that I came, Bob, is that this is much bigger than this. In terms of survival, it's not that big of a deal. It turns out that actually my mother did manage to feed us. My mother did not even finish elementary school, believe it or not. She didn't go into middle school. To go into middle school was a big deal back then for people like my parents. But she managed to feed us. I never went to bed hungry. So kind of taking care of yourself physically, this is the stuff that animals do, like the birds take care of themselves. And so I realized there was something bigger in terms of turning this life into, turning water into butter, that to create something bigger than just surviving, and to essentially find out what is it that we needed to create from ourselves, our expression. And so that's the quest that I've been on in terms, what does it mean for this spiritual journey? And this is what I'm sharing with readers in terms what that quest has been for me what it means for turning water into butter, the tools that I've found that have been useful, and what my perspectives are on that topic.
Yeah. I want to take you back here to that point. How old were you when you came to the realization that your mother had no clue as to where your next meal was coming from?
I think I was about 5 years old. Putting it into context, because my mother left when Haiti when I was 7 years old. And so I would say, based on putting things into context, I think I was about 5 years old.
Okay. Now, from what I read in your book, I understand that of all your family members, you were considered special for some reason. Can you explain to the audience why you were a gift and why you were so special to your parents, but especially to your mother?
Yes, I was special because she had a difficult pregnancy. And in Haiti, people, I would say, are superstitious. It would be fair to say that for somebody, an outsider. But my mother had a child every 2 years. And after the last one who died, she didn't have one for 10 years. And she had a disease. She couldn't get treated. And essentially, later she found out that, she was pregnant. And when she had me, it was a difficult pregnancy, she had a dream that she should call me Samuel. And so she wrote the name in charcoal. She wrote Samuel and said that's what she would call me. My father did not want that. And my father, later I learned, is from my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, wanted to name me Jean Gilmont. And I think it's because he himself as well, he wanted to make sure that I was protected. And essentially, he wasn't a Christian. And in Haiti, there's this thing about names in terms of, kind of the African traditions that he came from, traditional religions. And so he believed that in giving me a name that would protect me. And actually, my name, Jean Gilmont, the Gilmont part means will protect. And I think it's probably that he got it. He was inspired. It was inspired because I can't believe that my grandfather, a name that I've not seen anywhere else, that he would have come up with it by himself. So I have the Jean Gilmont, which is unique. But my mother wanted to call me Samuel, and that's what she calls me to this day, or my immediate family calls me. They use Samuel. And so that's why my mother believed that I was special, that she believed that essentially I was not only God-given, but she felt that God sent an angel to tell her to name me Samuel. So for her, I was very special. And so I grew up with that aura of being special. And I say, in the book, it doesn't matter. I'm still, as somebody who was Western educated, so I have the bias in terms of asking, could she have been wrong? Could it have been something else? What matters, though, in terms of the reality that matters is that she believed that I was special. That's what matters. Right. And she treated me as somebody special. That's what mattered. And that's what I had along with me, always this thing that I came into this world, I was special. God wanted me to be here. That's the only reason that I was here. And that carried me through. And I think that's the lesson. And I would say, maybe everybody is. Even if it was not been treated like that, I was fortunate to have that from my parents. And I wish everybody had the same thing, that belief from someone that you are very, very special. You are truly a gift from God on this earth.
So how did your siblings and your cousins feel about that?
Well, I always kid them. And not only that, but also my grandmother, my maternal grandmother is also my godmother. And I'm the only one. And she has many grandchildren, but I was the only one that she chose. I don't know if she chose me to be her godson. So yes, there's always a little bit of kidding and there's certainly still a little bit of resentment I feel sometimes from my siblings, in terms of being the special one. And I have to say, I do use it. And my, my partner, she gives me, oh, the special one. So yes, sometimes I use it. And I think some must, I don't know that this is necessarily strange that some in my family feel that maybe I'm a preferred child from my mother. Um, uh, I think if you ask my sibling, they'd say I'm the preferred one. I would say, you know, just maybe because I'm the first son, but yes. So we have a certain history with my mother because I'm the older son. But
Yeah.
yes, some of my siblings certainly feel that I got a preferential treatment.
So you did grow up with a firm religious background. Could you talk about that a little bit and how that impacted your life?
Sure. So my mother became a Seventh-day Adventist specifically. So she was very religious, and I don't know if you're familiar, Bob, with Seventh-day Adventists. They observe the Jewish Sabbath. So they keep the Sabbath, and I've kept the Sabbath all the way until actually now. Although I don't practice it religiously the same way, but in terms of for most of my life, I mean, that means that I would go to church every Saturday from sundown on Friday to sunset. To sundown on Saturday, I would not do any kind of activity. Um, um, the activity where to earn money. So I would stop working. Um, so I would say, what I'm what you call evangelical. I've read the Bible several times, cover to cover. Um, and perhaps this is kind of what led to the change is that at some point I started to question um, what I saw in the Bible versus my experience of a loving creator. And I mentioned in the book that at some point I realized that scientifically I could probably explain some of the inconsistency in the Bible in terms of someone getting a message and they would not necessarily be able to translate it for everybody to understand. And they may not have necessarily understood what they were being told. What I could not reconcile in the Bible is my experience of a loving creator and how that what who we said to be God behave in the Bible, that was inconsistent for me.
So this this sense of disconnect between the religion that your mother was following and you were absorbed in up to a certain point in your life, that carried over into your first marriage, correct?
That carried over to my first marriage. When we met, we were both religious, and I'd say we believed that we were building the kingdom. Essentially, created a family, and we we actually were very active in the church in terms of we would be inviting ministers to come in our area. We would, I was preaching the message. I was essentially, I was very active as a leader, so to speak, in the church. Um, and when I had that disconnect, I stopped attending church. And I've always remained spiritual in terms of believing in a creator. But I think it created tension in our marriage, and I simply didn't feel that I could be authentic in going to church or in going through the same rituals that we had. Um, we used to pray, and our prayers was more like kind of, I'll say, I don't know for every Christian, but I felt that ours was more like a begging to a God, where my whole understanding, my whole kind of view of a prayer changed in terms of I see a prayer more as an affirmation, as believing that, if I have that what I want, I can create it, I can affirm it. So it just created a different dynamic in our relationship that it made the marriage untenable, in essence.
Okay. All right. Let's move on then to the this transition of coming from such a background that even though you didn't see it as, living in poverty, maybe the outside world sees Haiti as pretty much a third world country and with many issues. And people would read about your story or hear about your story and want to know, all right, how did this little boy who didn't know where his next meal was coming from suddenly, well, not so suddenly, I guess, but come to the point where he's an entrepreneur and is the founder of 2 different companies and is lecturing all across the country. He's an adjunct professor. How did that happen? And when was your first venture into entrepreneurship?
I think I've always had the entrepreneurial bug, so to speak. And when I think back, and I mentioned the book, my first bug was I had bought 2 hens, and I thought I was going to create a huge chicken empire, so to speak, by breeding them. But somehow that didn't materialize because I didn't have the hands for breeding. And my 2 small hens, they ended up as a stew. So that's probably the first one. And when I went to school, I thought I was going to go into a business degree, but it's just that in college, I was more advanced in math. And so I kept on taking more classes in math. And it felt there was a certain comfort level because math is universal. You don't need to speak English. And frankly, it was also easier for me, that I didn't have to write long essays. I was seeing my friends in liberal arts like psychology, history, writing long papers. I didn't have to do that. In math, if you see a problem and you have a clue and you have the lights turn on, you just write the answer and then boom, you can put your pen down and you're done. But essentially in terms of how did it happen, it's this drive that when I said I realized when I was before that first experience, everything was great for me, the first 5 years of my life. When I realized that my parents could not feed me, I decided that I would be in charge. I decided that I wanted something different, and I was driven by what I wanted. And I created a path for myself that education was the way. And so how it happened is that from early on, I was the kind of kid that the parents didn't have to say, stop playing, come do your homework. It was the reverse. People were more concerned that I was too much into the books, that I was spending too much time reading, and that I wasn't practical, that I was too much in the clouds. And actually some of the things that I used to tell people that this is my dream, that I was going to go to education, I was going to go all the way. They felt that I was dreaming. And some of them wanted to bring me down to reality, to earth, and say, shoot for something like practical, like become a teacher. You can make good money doing that. But that's not what I wanted. And I believe I could. And so I put the effort in pushing myself to a certain limit, beyond that what most average kids would do. And it wasn't something I didn't have to be pushed. It was just driven inside that I pushed. I would say I put a lot more time in studying than most kids, most young men my age.
In the book you talk
Did
about.
I answer your question, Bob?
Pretty much, yeah. In the book you talk about your persona that you adopted as being the lone wolf, and that was something that you held on to and that got you through many a situation. So could you talk a little bit about why that was important to you, being this lone wolf?
I think, so this is the story that I told myself. I mean, so my mom left Haiti when I was 7 years old. She went to Guadeloupe. I rejoined her in 1980, so for 2 years, for 1982, and then she moved to America. And then I only rejoined her when I was 19. So I only spent about 9 years with my mother. So I felt that I was alone in the world, or that's the story I told myself, that I couldn't rely on grown-ups to help me. And I think that was part of what's driving me, is that I'm a lone wolf. I have to do it by myself if I want to get it done. And so that was the persona that I was carrying. That was what I was dealing with the world. I mean, I think that helped me in terms of pushing me that, hey, you're in this world by yourself. And I would say in hindsight, it's just a story, because this is not true. I also talk about the book in terms of how Providence has been there to help me. There are situations where I couldn't help myself. Certainly couldn't help, that Providence was there. There were other adults, like great teachers, that came in my way. But that story, I thought that it helped me, though. And when I say it's a story, it doesn't mean that I'm saying that it's a true story, but that's a true story in the sense that that's what I told myself.
Yeah.
And I felt that certainly drove me and helped me and pushed me.
So at some point, you decide that you no longer need that persona, that you're ready to discard it. And I guess, what was the realization? What was the trigger that said, okay, that served me well up to a point, but now I'm different and I can see the world differently. There's something that changed your perspective. What was that? Was it an incident? Was it a book that you were reading? Was it, I don't know, what was it that changed for you?
So I think it started with a question, right? And as you're building companies, I engage coaches to help me, and I would say that for people who are in entrepreneurship, that at some point you realize that what got you to create a company is not the same skill set that will get you to grow a company. And certainly, if you're a lone wolf, you will not grow that company, because you do need other people to take a company to a certain level. But in the process of looking to grow a company, I think some of my coaches, they helped me to grow myself, and they pointed me to certain books and certain workshops. There's a company that I mentioned in the book called Doyer Underwood. They're still very good friends of mine in terms of helping me with that self-realization. I also did Landmark Forum. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Bob, but that's also something that I would recommend. I don't know if they've kept the same level of experiential training. I also look into books. I mentioned Father Richard Wall, Franciscan priest, who's more spiritual than religious. So I don't want anyone to feel that essentially that it's dogmatic. It's going to be religious. So I think a number of these books and these trainings, they've certainly helped me in realizing that the lone wolf was just a mask. that's just a strategy that I was using to cope with and to get there. And I suddenly also realized that it caused a lot of damage to other people and to me in using that persona. And so I started to ask myself, um, uh, beyond that, this is a story that I told myself. And so what next? In terms of this is the mask, but who is real me? And I would say also that uh, just not being your father, not being your mother is not necessarily being who you are. And so these books and these workshops, that I mentioned, I think they were part of helping me get rid of the mask.
Yeah. So at this point in your life story, you seem to have found a place in your heart that is comfortable. You seem to be at peace with yourself, and something said to you, okay, I need to write this book. So what was it that made you decide that you needed to write a book about your experience at this time of your life?
That's a very good question, Bob. I asked myself, there are many books. Why should I write this book? Many times. And I also came to the realization, what would I want to tell people if I was on my deathbed? What occurred to me is that it would have been sad if I had died as a lone wolf or with that story playing in my head. And that it would not have been living an authentic life. It would have been living a copy. And I like the quote about, you were born an original. Why should you die a copy? So, Bob, I come from Haiti, but, if you look at my story, it's, I would say it's similar to the story of every single human being in a way that we all come into this world where, I've said most people 1 year, 2 years old, you probably felt that you were loved. First 2 or 3 years, even for 6 years. But at some point, we all develop some strategy to cope with the world. And we create a story, we tell ourselves that story over and over. That story wants us. And then I say, in the book, it's kind of like you're being in a movie, you're given a script, but you embrace that persona so well that you become the persona. Or the people in the movie, they're telling you that you're the persona, they're interacting with you as that persona, and you embrace it, and you forget who you really are. And how sad it is, even if you're playing a cool character, to not be who you are, actually. And so that's what drove me to write this book. If anything, I hope it touches somebody, it inspires them to live, to be true to themselves, to live their true story. That's what inspired me. Because it would be sad for anyone, even one of us, to die as a copy or to live basically a scripted story that is not their true self.
So who is your true self? When you think about Sammy and you had to tell somebody, this is who I am, who are you?
I am simply who I am. If I tell you anything else, it would be extra. It would be a label. I am. That's all I am.
Okay. That is a conclusion that a few people have come to. I've got a book on the shelf behind me titled I Am. And that's what it's all about.
And that's all there is to it, Bob.
And it's right in the Bible. I am that I am.
and that's all that we are. And I'm still in awe, Bob. I'm still trying to discover that and experiencing it.
Uh-huh. So this conclusion, and since I've read your book, I have some ideas as to what that means to you, is that you are not this body.
Definitely not.
But
I am not this body. This body is just contains me, a me that is immortal, that is eternal. So this body contains a being that you're interacting with, and I'm, this body, it serves me to experience this world. So yes, but in terms of and I wasn't trying to be facetious by saying, I am who I am. I mean, yes, but this being, in terms of describing it, it is, I could talk about some attributes of it, but I could never say this is exactly who it is. If there's one thing that I would say is that I believe that the essence of my being, as is your essence, Bob, is that we are love. I mean, if you look at every tradition, every religion, it says that we are love, we are infinite love. And I believe that's our essence. I believe we came on this earth to grow and to love and to experience love. So that would be the only two things that I could say is true universally about kind of characteristics of who I am or who any human being would be.
Yeah, there's a friend of mine who's an ex-Catholic priest, Vince Lisi, and he's been on this program, who just expresses that, I am the expression of God's love in physical form. And that's a mantra that I can live with, that being an expression of God's love in physical form makes all the sense in the world to me. And we can be that for each other.
No, I believe that. I believe that in essence, we are that element, kind of an instrument that God essentially emanates through. So there is something in terms of persona. One definition is that per is sound. And I like this definition. I haven't checked it in terms of the etymology of that word persona. So there's the etymology that I talk about in the book about that being a mask that you carry. There's also the analogy that essentially who we are is that we are each like an instrument, and the sound, kind of the image of God is going through it, and so it's an individual representation of the divinity, so to speak. So yes, so that's I believe that we are also that representation of divine love on this earth as well. That's another definition.
So I have a couple other questions that are not quite so esoteric. One is that I know that after the devastating hurricane in Haiti, you went down there to see how you might be able to help. And one, I'd like you to talk about that experience, but two, I'm curious as to what conclusion you came to, because I'm a member of the Rotary Club in my community, but Rotary International in general has really looked to be able to help out in Haiti as much as they can. And often they're not exactly sure what's the best way to approach helping the people of Haiti. So what did you discover when you went down there, and what conclusions did you come to?
So one thing that I discovered is the resilience of my brethren in Haiti. So when I went there, people were joking, playing dominoes, listening to soccer games on the radio, because not everybody had TVs. But, I mean, there was this joy, this joyful spirit, despite the earthquake. So that touched me. The other thing is that I felt like a spiritual connection there. And then finally, I think it was suddenly, and I was 40 years old when that happened. I think it suddenly was part of my questioning of the life that I've lived thus far, and led me to say, I need to make a contribution now. I mean, I think I've been so focused on myself, my family, to say, you know what, now is the time for me to start making a contribution. And it also made me realize how grateful that I was, that, this could have been me. There was nothing that made me superior to the people who've lost their lives. And to the fact that I was able to escape the situation out of Haiti, it wasn't because I had done anything special. It was because my parents were able to take me out of the circumstances, but I could have been one of those people affected. So it had a profound impact on me spiritually to make me realize, that I've had a great life. I've been very blessed beyond measure, and and made me question in terms of how do I want to contribute now? How do I want to live the rest of my life? I would say it certainly made me less afraid about life.
Yeah.
It gave me a certain, I would say it's not resilience. It just made me appreciate the life that I had, but also have no fear about what could, if I could see people dealing with the earthquake and how they could stand, it inspired me that, I don't have to worry about my next meal. I don't have to worry about anything that could come my way. If people in such abject poverty, they could have hope. And this is when I started to use the term first world problem versus third world problem. So I think this is when my friends tell you that when people talk, I say this is a first world problem. A first world problem meaning for us Western America, we have a roof over our head. The stock market goes down by 5%. We think the world is coming down. See, this is a first world problem. You still have food, you still have shelter, as opposed to a third world problem.
Yeah.
So I think this is the impact that the earthquake had on me.
So is there a way that we can help the people of Haiti, or is your conclusion that they really don't need help? They're fine.
It's a very difficult question for me, Bob, because I would say that some of the aid that Haiti has received has not been beneficial. It's kind of like if somebody has a chronic disease, you're giving them Band-Aid, it's not helpful. Maybe give them something for the pain, but you need to look for a long-term solution. You can't keep on giving somebody fish. You need to teach them how to fish. I would say, in terms of how Haiti could be helped, I think, it's entrepreneurship, investing in the young people to help them grow. I think we have to be careful with some of the aid that we have been giving in terms of giving food that then prevents local merchants to sell, and farmers to sell what they grow. Some of the aid that we give, like rice, is competing against local production. So yeah, we have to be careful. And but if somebody wants to help, I would say invest in young people, entrepreneurs who are going to create jobs. I think this is probably the safest bet.
That makes a lot of sense. That's good to know in terms of the best way to approach any country. I know I spent some time in Rwanda, and one of the issues there was that the U.S. kept sending over used clothes or unused clothes, but manufactured clothes that nobody wanted here. And what it did was it stifled the locals who wanted to make money out of their sewing skills and their ability to make clothes, when they were able to get all this cheap clothes or free clothes from us. So,
yeah,
it's important to be able to allow the local economy to flourish.
Yes, and the same thing happening in Haiti. You have milk, powdered milk that we don't need that gets sent there. Stifles the economy in terms of people who can sell, who have milk production. We send a lot of things like rice, agricultural products. Haiti is a country that has a lot of farmland. So it stifles the economy in terms of preventing the local farmers from selling their goods. But at the same time, we have a lot of young people, very entrepreneurial. People find a way to create jobs, to create income. I think, the best way to help is to find those entrepreneurs, invest in them, and let them create jobs in Haiti. If somebody grows, I believe that if an entrepreneur grows, they will grow whatever that they're building. And that means that they're creating more jobs in their community.
Yeah. Well, at the end of every discussion I have with a guest, I always ask them to leave the audience with a few words of wisdom. Now, I know the end of your book has quite a few words of wisdom that you'd like to leave people with. So I'm just going to turn this over to you, and whatever you would like the audience to know from your vast experience and wisdom up to this point, now's your chance to tell them.
Well, first of all, Bob, thank you for inviting me on the show. I'm very grateful to have this conversation with you and to have met you. One of the lessons that I hope anyone with the book gets is that don't live as a copy, live as, live your who you are, and seek that. I believe that at the end of the day, our essence is love. And we are all an expression of love. And you can't do love in isolation. And so I commend everyone listening to make sure that they find a group that they are a part of. It's good for your health, for one thing. So I'm a public health professional, and in terms of my training, Bob, is in the School of Public Health. That's and people put the emphasis on nutrition and physical activity. Well, it turns out, and I mentioned this in the book, it turns out that the number one factor for quality of life and longevity is whether you have quality friendships, quality relationships. And so I would encourage everyone to touch someone. And this is coming from an author who told you that he felt that he was a lone wolf. And what a contrast. And I think, having told myself that story of a lone wolf, I can say 100% that we human beings are social beings. We were created to live in community. Yes, I can tell you that I would be sad if I was living on an island by myself. Probably just like of you, like everyone else. But we are made to be social. So I would say, to be living our essence, which is love, we need to be part of a community. So I encourage everyone to seek that fellowship and to find who they truly are and to make a difference.
Okay. Well, audience, as always, take what resonates with you and incorporate it into your life and put the rest on a shelf until you're ready to deal with it. And until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.